Hi guys, so in this video I'll be sharing a few tips and stitches that you can use on your stretch knit fabrics. First thing I'll say before we get into the stitches is get some stretch needles that are suitable for the fabric that you're working with. I'll put a guide on the screen so you know exactly what needles to get based on the fabric that you're using. So I'm turning to the straight stitch on my machine, and then to get that triple straight stitch I'm going up to the stitch length and I'm turning it to the red, because that is what's going to give us the red kind of triple straight stitch that you can see at the bottom. I'm making sure that my tension is on 4. I think that should do the trick, and let's see how this stitch comes out. So here is our triple straight stitch. So this is what it looks like at the back, and then this is what it looks like at the front. It pretty much looks like your standard straight stitch. It just has a few kind of overlapping stitches. So this stitch is perfect for your heavy knit fabrics like scuba, for example. If you do use very lightweight like rayon or lycra, it can cause a bit of waviness, or it can cause your fabric to stretch. So bear that in mind. Great for heavy knit, not so much for lightweight. So next we have our zigzag stitch. This is great for your heavy knit as well as your lightweight fabrics. I would say if you are using it to sew an entire garment, so a skirt or a top, just make sure that you use the smaller zigzag stitch instead of the larger one, because you can kind of adjust the length or the width, and that is going to help make sure that your stitch comes out as neat as possible. And then for the stitch length, I'm making that 3 and the tension is going to be 4, and I'll show you what that stitch looks like in a sec. This is what our stitch is looking like. You can even make it smaller than this, so make the zigzag stitch smaller if you want to, and as you can see, when I stretch it, it's not snagging. So yeah, definitely give this stitch a try as well. This third stitch is my newfound favourite, and that is the Overcast stitch, because it mimics pretty much what a serger would do when you're stitching with like stretchy fabrics. And then again, for this one, it's a red one. We want to do the red stitch. So again, I'm just going to turn this stitch length to that. And then my tension, I'm going to keep it the same, and I'm going to show you what that stitch looks like. So you can either use a regular presser foot for this stitch, or you can get yourself an Overcast presser foot. At the moment I don't have one. It's on my list of sewing stuff to buy, but if you're using a regular presser foot, I would just say either line up the fabric with the end of the presser foot, as you can see here, or add at least a 1/4 inch seam allowance, because if you put your fabric too close to the needle, your fabric may get caught underneath the machine, and then that's a whole disaster. So yeah, just add a tiny bit of seam allowance, and then you can trim off the excess in the end. So annoyingly, my thread snapped on the last few stitches. That's an indication that I need to adjust my tension, but I can still talk through this. So as you can see, this is what the Overcast stitch looks like. What I'd say is after you make that stitch, you can just go ahead and trim off the excess. So trim as close to that zigzag little pointy bit as much as possible, and then it will kind of mimic, as you can see I'm showing you on my jacket, that kind of serger look that you have when you're stitching like 2 pieces of stretchy fabric together. So for the next stitch, I'm going to be using twin needles. I'm going to switch out my stretch needle that I've been using for these twin needles. So for this stitch, I do have a short kind of video where I explain how you can use twin needles, so make sure you check that out. So I've threaded my sewing machine, and I have made sure that I've used 2 threads. I've used different colours that have gone through one. So one has gone through one needle, the other has gone through the other needle. I've changed my stitch to be a straight stitch, and that is a regular straight stitch. The stitch length is 3 and the tension is 4. So you can see what this stitch looks like. There's just 2 parallel lines running alongside each other, and if I flip it to the back, you can see what the back looks like as well. This is great for hemming, like I've said, instead of using a serger. So next up, we are using fabric stabilizer, and for this you can use this with any of the stitches that I've gone through. It just helps add a bit of sturdiness, so I'm going to use this with the twin needle stitch. Fabric stabilizer is ideal, especially if you're working with lighter weight fabrics. So maybe your lycra or your rayon, to help give that stitch a bit of sturdiness so it's not having those waves, and so it looks as neat as possible. I'm using it on scuba, so you can see that the end result isn't as ideal because scuba is pretty sturdy already, so you wouldn't really need a fabric stabilizer. But as you can see, I'm just laying it where I will be stitching, and then for this I'm just going to encase it with the fabric. So I'm folding it a tiny bit, as you can see. Here you can see how the stitch came out, so it came out much flatter than that first stitch that we did with the twin needles, and that is because we've used that stabilizer. So again, if you're using this with rayon or lycra or lightweight fabrics, it's going to help make sure that your stitch is sturdy and as neat as possible and avoid any snagging. Because I've used this on scuba, and because the tension, I could have adjusted the tension, there's a few stitches, but again, play around with it, see what works for you to get the best stitch as possible. And with any sewing project anyway, always make sure you test your stitches on scrap fabric before you go ahead and stitch it on your actual sewing project. And that is it for this stretch stitch demo. Let me know if you found this helpful in the comments, and let me know which one you're going to try out as well. If you want to see how I put some of these stitches to use, make sure you check out my tube top sewing tutorial over here, and I'll see you over there. Bye guys!